Hello, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks, Charles and Performance Day for inviting me for quite a deep dive session on the PEFCR. I'll come into it just in a minute. Quickly, who am I? I'm the co-founder of Cause 361. We are a consultancy company dedicated to sustainable fashion with one mission: accelerate it as fast as possible. So we are working in several areas. I won't bother you, but some of them will be material to this discussion, and we can, of course, have a chat afterwards. Most of enough sayings, more actions. We are also known to lead some collective actions. So as you can hear, I'm coming from France. In France, we are leading some collective actions since 2019 in traceability with all the federations from our industry in France. I'm also part of the PEFCR technical secretariat. That's what we'll discuss it later on, representing one of my customers. And since 2 years now, we worked on durability, which will be a topic I will discuss also with all of you. And we also work on reporting, which is also a hot topic right now. And last but not least, we also created a fair last year, different from Performance Days, but very interesting, dedicated for sustainable fashion and all hot topics we'll have. So I'll be happy to welcome you in May in Paris on those topics. Let's go quickly. We work with all the ecosystem, but let's go in the deep. So today, what I would like to share with you, and again, do not hesitate to ask questions. We'll have time for this. To settle the context, it's quite a technical topic, and I would like to discuss it clearly. Then we'd like an overview. We don't have time to go over 5 years of work, but I try to do it as best as I can in order to give you what's is the PEFCR, what's in it, and how each of you shall work with it and adapt your companies with it. And at the end, I will just share with you some insight regarding the strategy I advise you to do in order to be ready for this tsunami, more or less, that we will be living. So let's start first. One point of thinking. Without measurements, there is no progress. It's been so many years we speak about the crisis we are living in terms of environmental or socials. But again, without knowing how to appreciate it, how to measure it, we can see, again today, everyone is doing some green stuff. That's the issue right now that we need to fix. And in terms of environment, it's quite material. You're speaking about liters of waters, about kg of CO2, and so on. This is physical. So we should be able to calculate it. And this is exactly where we are. Since years now, we are in a jungle of greenwashing, whether they are coming from private label, from certifications sometimes, or from authorities or whatsoever. European Commissions did a study in 2020 and found out that more than 50% of the labels that were misleading. It's not substantiated. And you can see it now with the brands, we get less and less loyalty from the consumer side because all these jungles gives the consumers quite critics about what we do and how we do it. And because of this, Europe wanted to act in the early stages. And it reacted through what I call a tsunami of regulations. With the launch of the Green Deal, we have more than 16 pieces of laws that are quite massive since 2019. And that are dedicated to more or less rule the business, not only ours, it's for all loads of goods, but specifically ours. And what we are facing today, you all know it, we are facing a multi-crisis. The environmental crisis is here for a long time and more real every day we speak. But also the business. After the COVID, we had a good business side and so on. Now, the business is also going down, so it's also a tension we are to deal with it, which is adding more pressure, and we can see it also at the European level. Plus, since 2019, this is also a new reality in our European market. We are having an unprecedented attack, I will call it like this, of ultra-fast fashion that is heavily changing the business, the consumers, and so on, but has put some threats on the consumers first, as well as on businesses. And this we must also react. For all this topic, Europe decided a few years ago to launch initiatives that will be one of the pillars of their strategy. That's called the PEF, the Product Environmental Footprint. You have the same for the Organization Environmental Footprint, OEF. The PEF is what? It's a design methodology, an initiative to harmonize, more or less, how we measure and we display the environmental performance of a product. Like I said earlier, everybody speaks about how they do environmental performances, but we don't count the same way. We don't speak the same language, in a sense. So how can we share information if we don't speak the same language? We can't understand each other. Then Europe said, no, we want to work on this. Since 2013, they are working on this. This first idea was created by French government in 2008, sorry, but Europe brings it by its own and raised it more, and then it leads to also some specificities for each of the sectors, which we call the PEFCR, Product Environmental Footprint Category Rules. Because, of course, you can't speak about environmental footprint the same way for a sweater and for a mug. It's different processes, different materials, different topics. So we have to adapt from the general PEF methods to sectorial PEFCR methods. So, more or less, what is the idea behind? It's coming from what we have today. Several labels, several certifications, several private information, branded fibers, whatsoever, that all claim environmental claims. And you know, Europe is going to settle a directive called the Green Claims that will be finalized this year to more or less rule all these claims and go for only a unique source of claims that is substantiated. If you want to do a claim, then you will have to check before that your claim is scientifically proven. This will be live in 2028. For some of you, it could be quite a long time. For me, it's just tomorrow. So we have to prepare for this. That's the idea. And the idea is that behind this substantiation, you have to calculate that your environmental claim is based on LCA calculations. That's why Europe wants to harmonize it. You have a single methodology. So everyone speaks the same language. You have a single score per product in order to simplify the information from the consumer. And you have a comparable and consumer understandable topic. And at least but not last, you have also less cost for us, the companies, because it's all the same way of working. So how it's done? The PEFCR is a methodology that is launched and asked by the European Union. Then to make it, they are calling for what we call a technical secretariat, which is representing more than 51% of the volumes sold in Europe. Why? We are speaking of environmental impact, so volume is key. Okay? And they are not alone on this. They are checked by the European Commission through the DG Environment and two other bodies. We call it the EF subgroup, which is regrouping all the state members and the civil societies. And we have also the TAB, Technical Advisory Board, which is more the LCA practitioners and the scientists behind of it. Okay? So these three organisms work together, and at the end of the day, the commissions, through the DG Environment, decides to accept or not methodology. This is what we call democratic processes. And during this process, that has been for 5 years now, you have some public consultations. All of you, suppliers, NGOs, brands, whatsoever, can look at it, know what's in it, and give their feedback. This is a very democratic process. Maybe you were not involved, but it was open, like for every kind of process that are linked with the legislation in Europe. Very, very open. So, who is in the technical secretariat? I told you, people representing more than 51% of the volume. First, you get the leaders. So Cascale, that you all know, the ING index, more or less, is leading, coordinating the work. Help with the technical lead, which is Cantis, or another consultancy. Then you have the voting members. The voting members, we call them because these are the ones paying to develop the methodology, to pay Cantis and so on. So that cost quite a lot, but it was also open for small SMEs with affordable prices. Unfortunately, we don't have so much. We have more some organizations that represent it, like for France, ADEME. This is the armed arm from the Ministry of Environment. We have also Refashion, which is our organism for ERP. And we have several bunch like this that are representing more SMEs. The customers I'm representing in the TS is the Alliance for European Linen, which represents more than 10,000 companies from farmers to fabric makers. And we have also people from the US with the cotton. We have industry from Australia with the wool. That was from the beginning part of the process. We have also some other direct companies, like the big ones from the sportswears, but also from the mass market and so on. These are the ones representing the 51%, okay? So as you see, we try to have an exhaustive bunch of people, and you have non-voting members that didn't pay or didn't want to pay, but that were part of the process, assisting to all the process. So especially for you guys, the FESI was part of the process since day one also. They heard about it. And you have also observers, which is the European Union, with other also civil societies like the EEB, that are part of the discussion since the beginning also. This is for the WO, more or less, in the technical secretariat. What is the scope? So more or less, this rule, this methodology, is working for 13 categories, from apparel to footwear. And we are trying to cover all of the cases we can have in this field. These 13 categories for the scope. What is the timeline now? So I told you it was launched in 2019, already more than 5 years of work into this one. We had public consultation too during the discussions and the work, and it shall be delivered this year. It was supposed to be delivered in next month in April, but there is a but. We had some little discussions going on with the French initiatives. I don't know if some of you are French, but you may know that France also has launched since 2 years its willingness to have an eco-labeling methodology. So not only how to calculate, but also how to label. And then it has been officially notified to Europe, this methodology, French methodology, this last month. And Europe has more or less maximum 4 months to decide what they will do with. But the two methodologies are quite competitive, one another. The French one is based on the PEFCR, but with some changes that are quite arbitrary from the political side. And I'm French, so I assume my words. So right now where we have a conflict, more or less, from the PEFCR that is asking, also giving some rules regarding the environmental display, and the French methodology that is targeting an environmental display in France. So this is being discussed, but we should find an agreement, more or less, during this month, hopefully. We are in the middle of it, to be totally transparent. And then DG Environment shall approve the PEFCR by the end of this semester, and it will be live. It will be existing, and it will serve the different regulations and directive Europe use, targeting mainly two ones: the Green Claim Directive, and we already discussed this during this expert talk yesterday with Oana, and also the ESPR. And the ESPR is very material for all of you. Just for remember, the ESPR, for all of you, in 2028, the ESPR will come into force and ask you to check for every brand that delivers a goods in the European territory. You must prove some performances. One of it will be the environmental impact. If you are not at the right level Europe wants, then you don't sell in Europe. This is very material, because it's like we suffered in COVID. When you don't have goods to sell, you can't earn money. So this is very, very material, and normally it will be based for the environmental impact calculation on the PEFCR. In terms of environmental labeling, the Green Claim take the lead. In 2028, you can't claim something without substantiation. They will require you to calculate all this before and to prove it based on methodology, which shall be the PEF. again. So very material. And for the French initiatives, well, in 2028, it will be under the Green Claim initiatives. So normally, only one way of doing in Europe. That was for the context. Now, let's go more practical in what is behind this methodology. So first, I would like to, this is a very important one, understand the ecosystem of the PEF. So first, what we need is a methodology, how to calculate things. The same way, whether we are in Europe, whether you are in Asia or on the moon. Same way to calculate the environmental impact of garments. This is the PEF. Then for the PEF, you have some methodology to follow. Then you need to check some mandatory data. We'll go into it afterwards, but more or less, what is the composition, the weight, where it's done, how it's done. So you need traceability behind of it. That's the work you, industrials and brands, has to do. And by the way, no matter about the methodology, you will always have to collect some data. The more you have data, the more granular you are, the more the result will be the closest to your product. When you don't know some information, like for example, what is the environmental impact from 1 kg of cotton or European linen, then you ask this information, what we call generic data, coming from an environmental footprint database. Some of you may know already some private database like EcoInvent1. They did work also on the European process. And we have a European database that has been recognized and approved by public authorities, not by private companies. That's very important. And it's called the EF 3.1. So you call your data following the PEF methodology, using also generic data. It gives you an environmental impact through 16 environmental indicators. We'll come into it later on. And you can aggregate it into a single score in order to have a global overview. What is your impact in total? And you can then study it by kind of impacts or where in your value chain you have these impacts. Okay? These single scores is useful for you to design your environmental strategy. When we speak about 2050 to be neutral in carbon, there is much more than carbon, but you need data in order to settle your strategy. You also need this data, these scores, to also display an environmental claim. And that's all about what France wants to do and Europe regarding the green claims. Okay? This is how it works, more or less, all together. Now, what does the PEF methodology requires? It will give you 16 environmental impact. I will come to it in a minute. Plus an information on the microfibers. I will also come to it in a minute. It will ask that all the brands are supplying some specific mandatory data. Okay, I will come to it afterwards also. It will ask you to use this environmental footprint database, so everyone use the same sources about generic data. It will use also to verify all your calculations and so on, will come into it. And it will ask mandatory critical review if you wish to claim something about it. So meaning a third party has to verify how you did your calculation. And that is key also. So if we go in the deep for the specific mandatory data, there is not that much, more or less, but still some that are quite a little bit tricky to get. We need to understand at least 95% of the BOM, so the composition and the weight. So some companies, especially in fashion, they don't get the weight, usually. That's an important data point. The raw material transportation, where it's coming, the weight, the mode, the distance. So sometimes we don't even know where the raw materials are done. So that's also why I speak about traceability as a key point. The share of unsold product. This, of course, that's a dirty little secret from the brand they don't want to share, but it will be coming compulsory from several sides of the legislation, and it's very useful. Okay? And then what is highly recommended also, that you do calculation about your intrinsic durability. You saw yesterday some point about the intrinsic durability, how to calculate it, and also regarding the repairability. Okay? And something I didn't put in this slide, but we also add another notion on durability, the extrinsic durability, which is still to be developed. So all this information are very useful. There are not that many, but some could be tricky for the brands to get. Then the generic database, what is it more or less? So it's a global database with data sets on a lot of things, on materials, on processes, on chemicals. Right now it's one of the most extensive databases worldwide, okay? And you could all access it freely for the moment until conditioned, meaning that you must use only the PEF methodology to be consistent in a scientific manner with it, okay? But of course, Europe is also give you the means to do your calculations. Now, what are the limits and the boundaries, more or less? We still have some completeness issues on this database, of course. We still have some issues about robustness of the data sets, of course. The validity, I don't want it to in details, but there is a threat here, and requires the tools and skill to manage it. So regular brand or industrials can use it easily. And most of it, from the topic of this show regarding certification, the issue we also have right now is that most of the certification you are working with don't have their pendant on the dataset. So for a few of them have, but most of them don't have. So for example, the one from Textile Exchange, they are working on it, but today you can't find, I don't know, cotton for 1 kg of OCS cotton. You don't find it. GOTS, same. So you can't benefit of it. And that's very important. Karin will maybe speak more about this, but all the money the brands, industrials are investing into this either certification, either branded fibers by the same way, then you can't benefit of it. That's why it's important for them also, certifications and branded fibers, to understand and to engage. That's what Textile Exchange is doing and will deliver, of course, the information. But what is key here is to understand that in terms of environmental impact, a cotton raised and born in the US, in India, in Egypt, in China, has not the same environmental impact. An organic cotton in Egypt is sometimes with more impact than we can have in other parts of the world for generic cotton. I know it's shocking. Still, everything is accountable in this area, and we need to push the data and the figures. That's the big issues we have with certification right now, coming from eco-labeling certification to LCA-based certification. Nevertheless, some industries are doing what we did with the linen industry, European linen. You will find it on the database, and you could be using the certification along with the environmental impact that has been validated by Europe. Now, one key point also that is asked by the question is to verification and communication. If you want to do external use as Green Claim, you must verify your calculation. This takes time, it has a cost, but at the end of the day, don't forget the target is to have trust with the consumers regarding the claims done by the companies. Now, I was speaking about the 16 environmental impacts. What are they? You know all the carbon, climate change, most famous one. But you shall never rely only on the carbon or tunnel vision on this. There is many of these. And every time you try to eco-design a product, you have to look in a broader view. If you design only for carbon, you may have some transfer or rebound effect on the water or other ones. So it's not that easy. Sorry. And you need to adapt yourself and to talk about this. And you can look also that we have some environmental impacts regarding, of course, climate change, the water, but also all the different ways to pollute the ecosystem, all the limited resources, and what is quite new, all about human health, which in our field we are not used to it. But of course, that has an impact. Now, that's quite important. So
you can tell this is live. Real problems. Not enough water for you, Stefan.
Speaking. Yeah.
Stefan, are you all right to continue?
Yeah.
Sorted.
I was speaking about the microfibers. That's quite important. First, I'm speaking about microfibers, not only microplastic. That's important. At the European level, what do we have in this methodology is based on science. First of it, the scope. We are only able to calculate the release of microfibers during wash. Anyway, then we are only able to calculate the impact on the marine biotope right now. So what has been chosen is to display this information as mandatory data, and that's it. But in part of the microfibers issues are already accounted for into the ecotoxicities. Yeah. One more. Thank you. So it's just a rabbit hole, but it's just the beginning, okay? And we need to know a lot of things. It's very important topics that start to being taken into account, but the science didn't go so far right now. So we are learning. And the PEF methodology is an ongoing process. It will be updated. Now, durability, quickly one. I spoke about durability. You spoke about quality. This is also a major change. In the PEFCR, we try to assess the durability of garments, how long does it stay. So there is two sides of the durability. One, the intrinsic, wear and tear, and the one extrinsic, regarding every influences that are not coming from the garment, but from the uses. Because, for example, if you take a look at all what has been discarded, you can see that most of it are still technically viable. So there is a durability that is not physical, but non-physical. And we are leading one of the few work on the topic after I've been leading a big study on intrinsic durability. Now, another topic that is quite important, repairability. Again, I won't take too much time into the detail, but there is two sides of repairability. And the first one is, you don't repair if it costs you much less to replace. So you should assess the repairability of a garment, not only but if you can change the button, but also the cost of repair and the impact on the selling prices you have. That's a major change also for all the brands. And of course, you see where I'm leading to. Some of the brands, because of their price strategy, are not targeting repairability. They are targeting replacement. Let's be honest about it. That strategy is fine with it. So that's important to understand also the relationship with the lifetime and the environmental impact. When you calculate your impact, you have a lot of impacts. The more materials you have, the more heavy your garment is, the worse it is in terms of impact, of course. But then, how long does it stay? How long does it stay in use? That's why the durability and the repairability that extend the lifetime of garment can also, more or less, dilute the environmental impact by the number of use. And this is how we encompass durability and repairability within the environmental impact. If you only work on absolute environmental impact, then the products that are quite the products that are heavy have a lot of impact, and the other ones have few impacts. But you know, if they are too much not heavy, they will be also broke easily and replace and replace. That's why we are chasing the single-use, more or less, habits. And so it's important to understand in this methodology that we encompass more or less the duration of service that we have been speaking yesterday, with all these multipliers of the lifetime, the intrinsic durability, the extrinsic durability that for now is set at 1 but will change, count on me, and the repairability that for now also can only extend the lifetime, but this also will be changed in terms of figures. So this is what we have right now in the PEFCR methodology. This will evolve, okay? And this is important for you to understand that the maximum levers you have as industrials and brands are to act on durability, repairability, of course materials and so on, but do not forget these two big levers of eco-design. So that's it for the global pictures regarding what's in the methodology. Now, a quick end on the strategic roadmap. So you understood during all this presentation 4 key points. First, LCA eco-labeling is the new black. You have to check with your certification. They are working on it, but they need to go for the LCA-based approach. And Europe will force them to do it. Second, methodological harmonization is needed. I was speaking about Europe and Francis. This is very difficult for brands and industrials to know what to do and so on, plus costly. We need harmonization. We need to speak the same language when it comes to environment and social impacts, by the way. Second point, I was studying, third point, sorry, a label evolution. We see it now. Some label, some certifications are evolving to the LCA world, and that's good, but still too slow. Fourth point, and you understood, for the brands and the industrials, environmental data are the Graal. You need to collect data on how you do the work, your process, your material, and so on. This is key, no matter what methodology will be used for. So this is what I suggest as strategic roadmap that you shall do right now in order to be compliant, more or less, for 2028. So still able to sell in Europe. First one, you know, all these topics are quite moving. So do the watch, quite on a regular basis. Use experts, or do it by yourself. It's quite moving, quite headache, everyone, but yeah, do it. Train your teams about this. There is so much going on. Train about traceability, about environmental impact, about durability, about repairability, but be prepared. Empower your team, that's key. Then when you will be ready, you understood that you need to trace. You need to put traceability systems within your value chain. You need tools, you need experts, you need accompaniment. You need to go on traceability first. Without traceability, no measure. Then fourth, you will be able to start to understand what is your environmental footprint. And this, if you start today, won't be finalized until 2 years. It takes time. I'm not joking on this. It takes a hell of a time. So in 2027, you will understand your whole footprint. Let's call it the scope-free footprint, more or less. You will know why, and then you will be able to start to design your own trajectory based on what the regulations want and also what's your strategy of your company. And you will be, at the beginning, ready to communicate and to comply with the law in 2028. That's why I'm telling you this is an urgency. You can't wait to invest step by step in the topic. This is my point of view, but really seeing it with some people already doing it, that takes time, money, dedication, and skills. The key enablers in this journey, there are 3. First, it's a transversal team that you need. Environmental topic is not the duty of CSR teams. It shall be in the core of all our different jobs, especially product developers and so on we are seeing today. That should be at the heart of their work. We should give them the means to do it. So we need to have a really broad team within the company. Second, of course, I'm an expert, so I will do promotion more or less, but you need expert advice. Because normally, everybody of you are already 100% charged. So you cannot take that much. So we need collaboration on this topic, and you can accelerate your journey. Then you need tools. We are in 2025. Everybody is speaking about AI and so on. Okay, traceability, durability, environmental impact. You have tools out there. So do not hesitate to use them, check them. They will simplify your life quite quickly. That's my key enablers I will share. And last but not least, I told you at the beginning, if you wish to see more, well, join us in 2 months more or less. That's dedicated especially for you regarding this topic about environmental impact, traceability, and so on. We have a fair dedicated for this, for you to have much more solutions on this. And if you wish to discuss more after the show or in between, do not hesitate to contact me. Thank you very much.
Can I ask you all to show your appreciation for Stefan, who's made it through despite what he was not drinking enough of? Now, slightly odd, we're not going to host questions, because we have, other than the announcement.
We invite you to join the workshop area in Hall C4 for its workshop. Not every window has the same view. Human rights in garment
we've got Karen. I think we've realized who we need as our new best friend, someone who understands the EU Green Deal better than anyone I've met. Karen, who I have found, and I've known you, Karen, for 20 years, I believe. You have introduced and endorsed what works already. And the EU Green Deal is a solution, but it is not the only solution. So the idea is that we have Karen now talking from a more holistic point of view about the role. So not the detail of the EU Green Deal, but the more holistic approach. Afterwards, they're both on a panel together with Somoik from England, who's going to be asking them questions. So we're going to listen to Karen, and because the questions will be applicable to both, we will get to hear the difference between them. This session is being recorded. In less than 2 weeks, it will be uploaded to performancedays.com with all the slides. So those people who did not get the focus on the slides, 2 weeks' time, go on and get them. So no questions at the moment. We're going to listen to Karen. Over to you, madam.
Thank you so much, Charles. Hello and welcome, everyone. It's great to be here with you today. And I will really take a holistic, a very high-level view on certifications. Certification is in everyone's mouth today. We hear a lot of opinions about certifications. We hear things like, does it pay off? Is it a valuable certification? Is this something for me, or is it only fake? We hear about audit fatigue and much more. So what is right and what is wrong? How do you find the right trail for your company or for your stakeholder perspective? Today, I will look at a few different types of certifications and their purpose. We will also look at the theory behind them and the facts we need to collect and understand in order to assess the quality of a certification and the value it brings to a company or also to you as a stakeholder. Beware, I will not discuss which certification is the best one. My intention is really to give you a tool to think with and a mindset about certifications. So there are hundreds of different certifications and labels out there, and it is really a jungle. So if we wish to understand which one is better, what shall we do? What are the questions we really need to ask? And in order to discuss that purpose, I will actually go back 40 years into the development of sustainability claims in the eyes of stakeholders. The evolution of consumer trust in brands around sustainability over the past 4 decades is a fascinating journey, shaped by a growing awareness of environmental and social issues, and the brand's varying responses to consumer demands for responsibility. So, in the early 1990s, sustainability was largely an abstract concept. Environmental movements had gained some traction, but consumers were just starting to become aware of the ecological footprint of their consumption. At this point, most brands were not actively promoting sustainability. When companies did make sustainability claims, they were often taken as at face value. So the average consumer, they didn't have access to a lot of information to question these claims at all. And there was little in way of formal regulation as well to understand how to assess different claims. And therefore, we had, well, there was really a lack of understanding and a lack of awareness about how to understand the different claims and judge them. So this was I trust you, the I trust you period, where the claims were taken at face level, were just taken like that, and there was not so much criticism about it. But I want to tell you a personal story, because I trust you. There were some stakeholders who were not convinced of I trust you. And when I started my post-studies in environmental science, 1992, So more than 30 years ago, I read an article about a lady called Alice Tepper Marlin of Council of Economic Priorities. And she published consumer guides. And I will show you one version of these consumer guides here. Very small shopping guides. And how they worked were, you could select the product you wanted to buy, for example, food or a beverage or clothing, and then you could see a list of the brands who produced those products. And the brands were rated, so it was not a product certification or a product rating, it was really a brand rating, where they had used simple categories, 7 different categories, for example, gender diversity, minority diversity, environment, and charity giving, etc. And then they had rated the brands for these categories. And I actually was so impressed by this, I was so inspired that I took this project to Switzerland, where I then lived and studied. And we developed, together with my fellow students, we developed a more detailed method. And we also tested it in a pilot together with many different brands. And we even tried to get funding for this project to make it on full scale. We didn't succeed with that. But what was perhaps ironic in a sense, but also nice, is that we all in the team, we always said that this is an idea whose time has come. And I think the time has come now, and we saw before how Stefan told about all the details you now need to know about the product in order to make a claim. And so it's a 30 years in between, but really a nice perspective to see. The idea was there a long time ago already. But nevertheless, we were in the 1990s, and now we can move to the 2000s. And here, there was a growing awareness about environmental considerations and environmental impact, social impacts. So some brands starting to make green claims, but most of the time they were more or less greenwashing. And the consumers, they also had a difficulty still in order to understand how to judge the different claims. But they started to be more critical. So a sort of a skepticism developed among consumers, and they started also to ask more questions. So they didn't only, accept the trust me approach, but they also asked to see proof, and they asked to be told what was correct. And then in the 2010s, and when we look back, there a lot happened. The awareness among consumers was now there completely. We saw the rise of Fridays for the Future and Greta Thunberg, etc. And there was much more scrutiny and many more requirements towards brands on how they should be reporting and how they should make their green claims. And now we are in the 2020s, and we are here asking for full transparency for data, for verified data, and a lot of detailed information about products, fabrics, etc. So it has been a long journey, but I really think it is nice to be able to look back and see what the trend has been and that we are actually always moving forward. Today, we live in a really difficult world, I would say, with a lot of political instability and, in general, instability. But what we can see when it comes to sustainability is really that even though there are backlashes, we are always moving forward and upwards when it comes to sustainability. And so, of course, now we need to consider what are the challenges and benefits of certification. I think it is really important to think about this in order to judge and understand which certification you should choose or which set of certifications you should choose. So the challenges are several. a certification is, to some extent, always only a snapshot in time. So, for example, if you conduct a factory audit, you walk through the audit, you look at health and safety measures, you look at the environmental protection, you look at salaries and payments of salaries, etc. Many of these things might be different if you would come tomorrow or if you would come 1 week later. So they are really just snapshot in time and space. Of course, there are things that remain stable. If you have an environmental installation, a wastewater treatment plant, as long as it is operating, it will probably be there again when I come 1 week or 1 month later. But there are, of course, with certifications, and we hear this very often from the stakeholders in the supply chain. There is an increased cost with certification. There is additional work with certification. There may also be certification fraud. We have had quite a lot of scandals related to certifications, also more recently. And even too many audits can become a burden. So we hear from many factories who have 10, 20, 30, or even more audits every year that they need to manage for. But of course, on the other hand, there are lots of benefits. So, for example, we ensure transparency, legal protection, brand and reputation protection. It is really a protection for brands if they have a proper certification, and it's also a trustworthy certification. And I will speak more about trustworthy certifications quite soon as well. And then, of course, you have in general the trust and credibility, you have creating synergies, but also speaking the same language. So if I know all the details about one specific certification, and I now know that a brand or a factory has this certification, then I know what they have, and I can judge that, as opposed to just receiving a claim of some sort. And now, very, very briefly, because there are, of course, lots of different types of scopes of certification, and I will not go into detail here at all, but in general, what you can say is you have, for example, the ISO management system standards. So the management system standards, here you can cover a group of companies, you can cover a brand, you can cover a factory with such a certification. And then, of course, you can also cover the product with a certification. We just heard a lot about the PEF. And, of course, also a fabric or a material. So there are many different scopes you can have of the certification. And then, on the other hand, of course, we have also the topic. What is the topic that is included in the certification? And the more general is, of course, environment, social, and governance. And then you can have any detail. You can have a combination of many different topics. And just to name one detail, which would then be a climate certification. So you have, of course, also very different complexity and level in the certifications, and you need to take this into account as well. But now I want to discuss a bit, how do we know which standard is trustworthy and which standard I can work with? So are there more or less trustworthy standards? And here I would like to ask you, what do you think? Which criteria would you apply when you select a standard or a certification? Any suggestion?
That's a good question, and I'm looking for volunteers in the audience, yes. Which is the easy one. So, hold on, I'll give you the microphone, then we can all join in.
A well-known, did you say, huh? Yeah.
How well-known it is, or how strict it is sometimes also.
Yeah, great, thanks. More ideas?
More comments from people who know more?
I would say that some are certified, accredited by public authorities as well.
Sorry?
That's me. Some are accredited more or less by the public authorities, so they have
Say it again, sorry.
Some are they are accredited
Ah, yeah, okay,
by
the
public authorities.
accreditation,
Yes,
yeah.
accreditation by public authorities, some of them, so it's also double
Yes,
test.
yes, thanks.
Oh, we've got Julie. Can I put mine in before yours? My worry are the people who rely on the income from the certifications to exist in the first place. But am I just being too cynical?
Who is earning the money with the certification? Yes.
How robust the verification process is.
Great, yeah.
Anyone
more
else want to
ideas?
volunteer? You're welcome to join in. And you should start worrying if I know your name, because I might come and ask you directly.
Yeah. Well,
Karen,
that's fine.
you've got
that's
4
fine.
to start with.
Thank you so much. Of course, reputation, is it a well-known standard certification? The accreditation process. And then also the industry recognition. So is this standard recognized within this industry or within this sector? We also have, do we have clear and transparent requirements? And I think this is really one very important criteria. Because if I want to buy a product with a special or with a certain standard or certification, I do want to know exactly the criteria. I want to know the detailed criteria. Perhaps I don't need all of them, but I do want to know that the criteria, that they are published and available. So if only the high-level topics are mentioned, but not the specific criteria, then I'm asking myself, is this really something for me? And then also the level and complexity of the requirements. Of course, there are some standards and certifications that are quite easy to reach, and there are such that are very, very challenging to reach. And we need to understand that when we are making our judgment calls as well. And then the evidence of impact. How do you measure the impact? I mentioned the ISO management systems. So for example, and I'm a fan of management systems. I think they give us a really good structure to work according. But for example, ISO 14001 requires that you have targets, 1 or 2 targets, that you are working on them, that you are reaching them, but it is not very specific about the impact. You can work at a quite low level of environmental performance or a higher level of environmental performance, and you still get the certification. I don't say that it's a bad certification because of that, because as I said, I think the management system approach is really important. But these are important factors to understand. And then, of course, we have the certification cost. Charles raised the question, who is earning the money with the certification? And so that's also who is doing the third-party validation. And then also, does the standard and the requirements evolve over time? And this is important. If you have a standard that is 10 years old and nothing has changed in the standard in the meantime, world changes, situation changes, technology changes, so probably the standard should actually evolve over time. And then, of course, also we have the red flags. So the things that just sound too good to be true, or as I said, when the requirements are not really clear. So based on that, how do I now select the best mix of standards? Well, there is no golden rule in that sense. There is not a perfect mix that everyone can just take on and adopt. It really depends on your own situation. So it depends, of course, if you are a brand, a manufacturer, or if you are another organization. Perhaps you are just a stakeholder wanting to assess a brand. So you should keep your own perspective. So for many manufacturing entities, it might not be so easy to do so because you are requested by brands and retailers to adopt a certain standard. But still, to not just adopt just like that, but really also critically evaluate the standards that you want to have. And then, of course, you need to ask yourselves, what are your stakeholders asking for? Where are your strengths that you wish to showcase? Where are the weaknesses that you would like to work on? And then which specific topics are important for you? What are the true benefits? And what is the actual business case? And now I want to tell you a story about certification, the certification dilemma. And I will link this to the differentiation between fast and slow thinking, the concept that was developed by Daniel Kahneman, who also won the Nobel Prize. He developed it with another guy as well, but Daniel Kahneman won the Nobel Prize with this. So the title is The Certification Dilemma. And in the heart of the city of Munich, Ellie Gedankenfrau, she sat at her desk evaluating different certification applications from many different factories. So this is her job. She ensures that brands and factories, that they adhere to good standards. And then her agency would give that certification to the respective factory. And now she had a new application from a high-end brand, a brand that was very well seen, had a very, very good reputation. And so her first thought was to, yes, this is a great brand, and it is worth it to give that certification to them. But that brand, she actually had seen that they had had compliance issues. So recently they had had a lot of audits being conducted at their facility. But there was one report where there was an incidence of a lack of safety records. So she was in a bit of a doubt on how to deal with that. But her instinctive reaction was really to grant the certification, because this was such a well-known brand where the factory was producing for. And this was also her fast thinking. So her fast thinking was really to just say, okay, I have the reports here, it looks fine, and I will agree with the certification here. But she then realized that it was time to slow down and go into the thinking mode, to think slower and really consider the situation as a whole. And because she had also seen cases, of course, with brands who had received a certification, had a stellar reputation, and then later they were taken back by scandals and problems. So it was time to slow down for her and to look beyond the surface and the level of urgency. So she did that, she slowed her mind, and then she started to examine the results again. And while doing that, she could see that the factory had actually improved a lot, but they were not really in the clear yet. They hadn't clarified all the issues that they had had. So she actually decided to ask them to give more information. So, and then she also realized that the impact of the decision making, the management had probably been pushing the factory to come forward with the documentation, even though they were not sure that they really met all requirements. And again, she thought, well, again, this is like something acting very fast, not taking enough time to really think it through. And this is exactly what Kahneman also said. You have the fast thinking, the slow thinking. The fast thinking is very intuitive. It just comes to our mind. This looks good, we will do it like this. But then, when you begin to think more about it, go more into details, you realize that no, there are actually reasons to hold back here and take another look, go more into detail. And I know that all of you can know what I'm talking about, because we always think fast as well. So sometimes we even have to force ourselves to think slower. But of course, another thing that she also realized was that a fast decision here would actually also undermine the overall certification process. So it would potentially even damage the certification process. So what she did was, she went the next morning and spoke to her team and told them, we will actually ask for more information here. We need to do that. We need to have more scrutiny here. And then a few days later, they received more information from the factory. And after they had studied that documentation in detail, they saw that the factory actually had not only resolved the issues, but gone above and beyond what was expected to them. So now Ellie could issue the certificate with a good conscience. And that was my small story about the certification and the fast and slow thinking. And with that, I just want to summarize. We see a totally new level of transparency and proof that is expected by brands and retailers, by factories. And the benefits and disadvantages of certifications, you do need to know your business case when you want to select a certification. The scopes are important to evaluate. The trustworthiness, perhaps even the most important point. And then, what is my business case? And of course, then also the fast and slow thinking. And now, 2 words about leadership and sustainability. The company actually is having its 10 years anniversary this year, so we are very proud of that. And we are more than 80 people now globally. We do conduct audits in the supply chain, environmental and social audits. We conduct chemicals management, but we also do strategy services, where we work with brands and retailers on double materiality assessment and strategies. We help them support their help them implement their strategies, etc. And we have offices in Germany, of course, where our head office is, but also in Bangladesh, India, Turkey, and Vietnam. And we have teams in some other countries as well. And here are my contact details if you would like to get in touch, or otherwise I'm here now as well. So thank you so much.
Everyone to show their appreciation for Karen. I also want to add something that Karen's a bit too humble to mention. Leadership and Sustainability do a regular webinar series. And if you are not confident in this area, they're brilliant. They get you to understand what you need to know to start. But rather than taking questions for Karen, I'm going to ask you to sit down. I'm going to ask Stefan to join us on stage, and we will take questions for all of us. So I'm happy to take a question from the audience, but I've got ones that I can kick off with if we don't get them from the audience. And we have one straight away.
So I've been keeping this one. I don't know who of you is going to answer it, but are those regulations that are coming into place, are they applicable to corporate wear as well? And I'm not talking about a moral perspective or economic, but really legal perspective.
Want to take it? Okay. Yes, there are several levels. So you have, depending on the regulations, you are liable for several levels. There is penal level. Some of them are liable to this, more or less. There is the, after the economic level also that we have. And in this field, you have, I will call it in 2 ways, sanctions that are post the act that you did wrong, and sanctions that are before. So what I just said at the beginning, for the ESPR, which is really a game changer, it's before. So I take an example of if we have Americans in the room, they live to something quite like this, the WIGO Act, as we call it, 3 years ago, more or less, in the US, regarding the cotton from Xinjiang province and the ban of this cotton in textile garment. It reduces in 2 years by 2 the import from Chinese province, more or less, and it has an impact because when it arrives on the ground of USA, then the customs are checking it. If you don't have all the traceability, then you don't sell. These ones are very material, and that's exactly what Europe wants to do, to focus more on the business side, more or less, but ante selling and not post-selling.
So that means that So I'm responsible for the corporate wear of a holiday experience company. We use manufacturers or contractors to produce our garments. Who is responsible?
Very good technical questions, and I may have some different side in the room then, because we have suppliers here and we have brands. Who is responsible? Technically, legally, it's the, we call it the people that put the goods on the market. So, it depends.
Who is that?
What does it mean?
Corporate wear.
Wherever you produce in Europe or not in Europe, the one that put the goods in the market, so if you are coming from outside of Europe, the one that is responsible for the duty, okay? That's the one putting the goods in the market. That's so
clear.
my advice, and I don't want to have issues, my advice, in terms of responsibility, you are all responsible, that's collaboration, and the brands are the one taking the benefit of it at the end of the day. They are the one responsible to check that everything should be done. But you will see the behaviors coming in, bad behaviors. So I warn everyone, especially the supplier side, in terms of negotiation for this ESPR coming, you should make sure that you are selling garments, but not the one doing the duties and so on. So your Incoterms will be key. Of course, you have to collaborate with the brands, otherwise no business anymore, but then let the responsibility be in the hand of who is the one selling to the consumer at the end of the day, okay? Because you are much more smaller than the brand are. Still, it will be collaboration, but beware, what we call it in French, metteur sur le marché, the one putting in the market, it's very key. So you could have a brand, could be the one, a trader, importer, could be the one, or a supplier, could be the one. That's a tricky one, of course. Nevertheless, it's not because someone has the legal responsibility that you are alone in this topic. Of course, you know the drill. The brands, if they want that information, they will come back to you quite soon if we have an issue. Okay, so then it's a business issue. It's very important that everyone understand that we need to provide this information, especially regarding data through the whole value chain. We need to collaborate before it comes. Otherwise, take the example with the US. It has a bad effect on business for everyone, and we are losing. Or you can take another example. Take the COVID situation. We couldn't provide the goods. You couldn't sell it. Everybody is dying. So it's not good for the business anyway. So that's why we should think about this. But technically, and for some brands that have an opportunistic behavior, you know how it works. You should beware. Voilà.
No, it's fine.
If I was to summarize, it's a minefield. Stay in contact with Stefan. That's what I would take away. Really nice and simple, because it's the fear of something's coming in which has the ability to stop your trading. Full stop. We've never had hard lines in textiles like that before. So we need professionals. Those people who are really in the outdoor community, the European Outdoor Group is right on top of it, but they have specialists advising them as well. Charles is filling, looking for other questions. Otherwise, I get to, we have the YKK question.
Thanks. Question about all of these obligations to prove that the product you're putting in the market is compliant with whatever requirements are out there. Online retailers, I'm going to say names here, Temu, Shein, who's going to do all of this oversight to really check that whatever products are coming in are compliant with whatever requirements will exist in the future? Because, hundreds of thousands of packages of shopping come into Europe, US, wherever, every day. Who is going to check if that is compliant?
Okay. So to reply here, and you're right, that's a good question. And that's one of the targets of the legislation. First, in the ESPR, as you see, it's ante the selling, so it will be like the duty rights, more or less, so the customs are the one to do the job. And how they do it? First, you have to provide information. So if you take the ESPR, we are more or less 16 requirements, some of information, some of performances, okay? This is not finished, what we want to eat and so on, but there is durability, environmental impact, repairability, percentage of recycled content, blah, blah, blah. Lots of things, okay? So first things, each time you sell one references, you need to provide this information. Customs will look, do I have this information or not? 16 information, do you have it? Or I don't. Then if you want to make a claim, you will be a control about did you verify it and so on. So they will have to check, and that's easy, and it's a blocking point for every brand. You have to provide information. The more you sell of references, the more work you have, okay? So the more volume you have to provide, and the more risk you have to bear, okay? So volume-based strategy are more at risk than small volume, first point. Then we all know the drill also regarding how they get undercover right now. It's because they are selling directly to all of us, more or less, a few PCs and so on, under the radar of customs rights. In Europe, in US, everywhere. That's big. And the regular businesses, no, they are shipping by plane or by boats, big loads of garments, so they have to stop at the customs office, okay? So that's why Europe is revising also the Waste Framework Directive regarding what is the level we will check. They are speaking about maybe less than 100 euros. And guess what? How many is the global, the middle range in this brand and so on? That's what they are targeting. So much more work to do for the customs, but much more tracking level. Same topic at the side of the Atlantics. They are also willing to check and to get lower these bars of the duty rights checking and so on. In this way, we can track everyone, more or less. So it's a battle, huh? It's not finished.
Karen, would you like to add to that? Because at the moment, Stephane's being made to work hard. I like this. You don't get a wise person and let them sit quietly. We want value for money. Karen, would you like to add something to that?
Well, I understand the question, and I actually agree with the question. I think it is a big concern because we have to collect a lot of data again and again for sometimes very, very similar products. And sometimes I would love to see that there was a more pragmatic approach to it and not really always individual products, but that you could do for product groups. Because, for example, when you think about conducting a life cycle assessment for all your products, it's a huge investment. But do you need that in order to be able to improve your products, really? That's a question, you know. So usually if you have done a few life cycle assessments for perhaps a few different product groups, then you can draw conclusions from there and apply them also on all the other products in the same product group. So this is my thinking, but I'm not the legislator here.
Well, I'm in a fortunate position. Constance, I'm going to come back to the point you brought. I'm an academic, so we feed ideas in. Don't listen to us. We're influencers. Listen to the guys who are campaigning on the inside. We know that the reason why textiles are being targeted are things that we're not allowed to say publicly, or the officials aren't allowed. They want to stop fast fashion. The problem is they're not allowed to single it out and call it fast fashion. So they have incorporated the whole of apparel textiles into the category. So the feeling is very much to make it hard. And if I want to look at the detail on the wash durability tests coming in, they're going to take longer to do the testing than the garments are on sale for. So they are putting so much legislation in to break the fast fashion model. We don't know how well it's going to work, how well it's going to be adopted, but at least the EU, this is part of their net zero target of 2030, they're trying something. So we will see how it goes. It's going to be really interesting. But I'm fortunate. I'm allowed to say direct statements like that. But officially, of course, we aren't targeting fast fashion. Now I'm looking for extra hands going up. Have I got questions for extra hands? Everyone suddenly loses eye line with me. We have one over here. Thank you.
Thanks, Charles. Thank you so much for these insightful presentations from both of you. I really enjoyed both from the past, but also what's happening in the EU. I have two questions. One, Karen, you have looked at last 30 years. I know you don't have a crystal ball, but looking at what's happening currently, where do you think we will end up in the next 10 years? And based on that, what do you suggest the companies to adapt and learn and those? That's for you. And Stefan, I think you mentioned about if you wanted to differentiate in the market, you need to have a verification of the claim you make. So maybe you can talk a little bit about how it may look like for a brand which has 5,000 products per year and they choose to claim for a few products. Yeah? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Krishna. I will begin with my question. So I don't have the crystal ball, but at least I have the possibility to look back many years. And I have been in the working in the sustainability area now for actually nearly 40 years. And it was there 40 years ago, the topic, and it is still here. And so what we see is really, and this is perhaps the four levels that I was showing when I was talking about the consumer awareness and how you judge claims. Because you can see, although it sometimes goes up and down, you see that the trend is improving and increasing. And we speak about a level of transparency today that was unknown a few years or 10 or 20 years ago. And so I see it very positive. Today, in the current landscape, we have a lot of different problems, not only environmental and social problems. We have political problems. We have war very near to us. And I think it is very, very natural that people think about this, that people are worried, and that not everyone can think of sustainability because we think it is the most important topic. And even I sometimes feel, I'm overwhelmed by what is happening today. But I have trust in our systems, and I have trust in the brands and factories' resilience, that there are times when where sustainability will have an upwind again. So I'm not that worried at all, and we see, and so my recommendation is really, yes, we have the omnibus communication that came out last week. So things are more unclear now, but what is actually valid right now is not the omnibus, it's just a suggestion. So we have the CSRD, we have the CSDDD, we have a lot of different things already decided upon. We have a lot of regulations and laws, directives in the pipeline. And so I would plan accordingly and perhaps be a bit cautious and also be a bit conservative in how we use our resources just in general. So I don't know if that helps, but that's my perspective on it.
And I will iterate, we saw, of course, lots of geopolitics happening in. We, as an industry, are not the preferred industry worldwide. We haven't been regulated since many years compared to, I don't know, food, medicines, cars, and so on, because we don't have a direct link with death of humans. That's obvious. Nevertheless, we do have a direct link with it, so it's starting to get over-regulated, and we are an easy target, more or less, for every regulation. So we can see it in the US, you can see it in China, you can see it everywhere. The authorities are starting to target us. Plus, we have a power of influence that other industry don't have. Everybody has a garment. Garment is part of your identity. It will always be. So we have much more impact and influence than energy that still has a huge environmental impact and so on. So it's also an opportunity for us to drive the change and to take it more or less as our own and to, like said Karin, put resilience and step by step and invest. So if I were, that's what I advise to my customers, you should invest in your transition. Don't wait for the pace of regulations. It's too late when you wait for this. You should invest at your own pace. It's quite costly and interesting, so it takes time. But you know where the wind is blowing. Maybe today, since the omnibus is blowing, the wind is blowing less strong, but always in the same direction. It won't turn back, never. So, as CEOs, the way is here. We just have to go it and embrace it. That's for first question. For second one question regarding verification, that's the key topic that is under discussion within the EU, how to proceed and how to do it and so on when we have so many products and so on. So that's quite a tricky thing. That's why they are believing on some more and more technological calculation regarding the environmental impact. You have some, that's why they want to design first harmonization on how to do it. Today, it's impossible. Tomorrow, when we force with one single methodology, then everybody calculates the same way. So it's easier to understand and easier to verify. Then you have some tools that will calculate. It's easier to verify also how they do their calculation because it's algorithm. They don't change each time like humans. They just reproduce. So we can check this easily now. Then we know with one single methodology where are the hotspots and the weaknesses. So if you want to find quickly, more or less, where are dark spots to see if the verification is well done, that's easy to do as well. And then what we still need to do is on-the-ground verification. But we already do it for quality and so on. So I believe this is to be. I believe we have a new era of business on this file about on-the-ground verification with people that do, for the moment, quality verification and so on. Tomorrow, these new skills will come into this ecosystem and be able to check directly and to simplify the work for manufacturers and for brands in order to verify. And of course, we won't verify 100% of the volumes done, but we can go quickly. And it's designed and targeted for these reasons, but still many things to understand and to clarify, and we are working on it at the European level to clarify the rules, more or less.
And on that note, I asked Stefan to come here because he was recommended to me. I played it safe. I added Karen because Karen knows more about the history and the development and the attitude of the whole of this than anyone else that I have met. I think we've just found a new best friend who we're going to stay in contact with, Stefan. He really is in the middle of it. So you both need the holistic overview, which is helping us to understand. But you're painting the picture of the detail we need to pay attention to. So can I ask the audience to show their appreciation for the two that I have on stage? I'm going to persuade them both to stick around for a couple of minutes if you want to speak to them individually. I'm hoping this is going to be the start of more conversations. But thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, Stefan.
Thank you. Bye-bye.